My name is Patrick. My question is, what is your take on Africa's move to quit from ICC?
ICC and Ebola.
ICC, Ebola, and terrorism. What is the way ahead? What's your take on that?
Okay.
Hi, my name is Jesse.
Hey, Jesse.
I just wanted to find out what is happening with India. What is the space of India in all this geopolitics?
This year we've seen Chad ask AU's help on dealing with Boko Haram, and Cameroon is going down the same way. Are we going to wait for the regional bodies, AU and maybe ECOWAS? Is it going to wait for Nigeria to call for help? Or is there anything that these bodies can do to prevent the insurgency from expanding?
So, if I'm honest, if we look at these very big supranational agencies, and particularly with the ICC, where most of the cases are in Africa, and we can't really hand on heart say that all the crimes are happening on our continent. There are crimes happening everywhere. And it seems to me that the challenge for us as Africans is that I have a lot of faith in that institution. In fact, I think, if I look back at it, the positive effect that came out for me was that, I don't think politicians would really risk their careers doing similar things now. So it has changed the behavior, I think. And I think that's positive. In terms of what I disagree with is I think essentially it's very Africa focused. And I think there's plenty of other criminals around that need to be taken to court. And why don't they go and try and do that? So that's my issue with them. I think the challenge here is a political challenge for us, is that one case has gone away, is the other case going to go away as well? And if it doesn't, what happens? I think that's the way I read it. Ebola is very interesting. It's sort of, what I find interesting is exponential, potentially exponential. What do I mean by exponential? It's when something can go from 1 to 10 to 100 to 10,000 to 1 million very, very quickly. That's called an exponential curve. And I'm glad that we've had some very positive news lately, that it seems as if it's coming down. I think Ebola, in many ways, our response was poor as Africans. I think we relied on everybody else. We didn't deal with it. These were remote parts of our continent. And I think we have to learn from that. We have to react in a more coordinated way. And then that brings me back, we were very aggressive at fighting the ICC at an AU level, but we were not as aggressive as fighting Ebola, I think, at that kind of level. In fact, I didn't see much of a response. With terrorism, and if you look at terrorism across the continent, you look everywhere, there's more of it. And let me turn it another way around. There's 7 billion people here in the world. If 1% or even less of that 7 billion are not happy, they have the power with the internet to create tremendous damage. And there are a meaningful number of people. It's not a small number. 1% of 7 billion is what? 700 million, 70 million. Let's take 0.1%, 7 million. 0.01, 700,000 people. 0.001 is 70,000 people. We're talking about a very small number of people that are creating fear and havoc. I think we are responding to it in a very strange way. It's particularly Europe. 3 days, 17 people died. I'm very, very sorry about it. Really, I am. But I'm also thinking, if no one in England would have published that kind of thing, they wouldn't have done it. And so why? So in a way, it was baiting. It was looking for some kind of reaction. And I'm sure there were communications beforehand saying, don't try it. If you do it, we'll do something. And they did it. So, horrible thing that happened. But I'm saying that how do we deal with this? In 3 days, we've got, we're sitting there, they're all marching. It was a fake march, by the way, because there was no one behind them. They'd gone to a secure street, if you actually saw what came out later. The biggest issue for me on national security and terrorism is this. I think national security has been a budget that has had the least oversight in every African country. It's been the budget which you can use to fund your political campaigns. You can say, national security. No one can look at it, right? Now think of it, if it's been happening for a number of years, we are behind the curve. Investments we said we were making, we probably didn't make. We probably bought faulty equipment when we should have bought some good equipment. Somebody made $100 million, funded a political campaign. We're way behind. We've got, I look at sometimes our guys, I mean, until recently, they're communicating on a mobile phone. In Yali, I got robbed, he said, come and pick me up, the policeman. I mean, what are we talking about, right? If the policeman wants to be picked up, what else is happening that we don't know about? So I think there's a gap there, and I'll be honest about it. And I think we as citizens have got to be honest about it and say to us, what is the budget? Where are you spending it on? Let's see it. And don't cloak it in some sort of cloak, oh, it's national security. India is the coming country under Narendra Modi. It overtakes China GDP in 2 years' time. It's going to be growing faster. I might disagree with Modi, some of what happened in Gujarat. But I think Modi has flicked a switch. I think the Indians have got a leader that they're getting behind. I think he's tapped into his people, and I think he's got that ingredient going, that magic ingredient, and which all politicians want to try and achieve, which is and I think it's quite extraordinary. And I think that that India will be the story for the next 5 years, particularly out of the BRICS. Brazil in trouble, Russia in trouble, China in India, and South Africa. South Africa's there more as a favor because they wanted some, but in terms of economic size, it's not justified, is it? It's not justified on economic size, I don't think. So in that context, I think the story in BRICS is going to be actually a very Indian story in the next few years. And I think Modi has really made tremendous strides, and I give him credit for that. With respect to Boko Haram and ECOWAS, well, first of all, I wonder, how do these guys like Boko Haram, where do they afford to get this equipment? There is something behind it that maybe we're not told about. And, I think, there are lots of theories about Boko Haram. But, I mean, if you look at land control, how much they're now operating over, you look at the intensity of their attacks, it's gone up like that. And it remains a very, very big concern for me. And I think the bigger issue for me in Nigeria is I think the elite in Lagos and Abuja are divorced from the reality up north. That's why, even a simple thing, like commiserating with your people, it took, good luck, Jonathan, a week. You're saying to yourself, isn't someone slapping him? Say, just say something. Say you're sorry. But you can't just shut up. And I think that sort of slow response time is a signifier of the issue that is in Nigeria. Can ECOWAS, do they have the military wherewithal or the experience to deal with this? I'm not sure. If you read sort of reports about the Nigerian army, they're not, they're not as complimentary as they might be.
My name is O'Brien.
Hi.
O'Brien. Hey. Recently, the African Union elected Mugabe as the chair.
Yeah.
The African Union. What does that portend for Africa economically? Thank you.
Ooh.
I heard we are so proud about our GDP, we are so proud about our economic status right now, but I wonder about the status of the Kenyan, the native Kenyan. We're giving all tenders to foreign companies. What is the effect on our local companies? A typical example is University of Nairobi's tower. I was asking some students.
This one that's near the Norfolk.
Yeah, I was asking some students. We are proud of engineers that we are training in University of Nairobi, but why do we tender China alone? Why can't we give even one student as an intern to even learn how to build these things? How many Kenyans are so proud of Thika Superhighway, but they can't afford fare to use the same highway? So what's the effect? The GDP is so good. What's the effect on the Kenyan, the local Kenyan, the native? Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Deto. Last year, S&P advised Kenyan banks to sort of take advantage of the credit rating. What are your broad impressions in regards to this? And also, just a follow-through question. Would you consider some stocks to be overpriced? My second question will be, when you look at the market currently, how would you describe the effect of quantitative easing on frontier markets? Thank you.
I'll come back to some other questions. President Mugabe, someone's tweeted, I think his name is Mohammed Welie, he's always tweeting, he's tweeted a photograph of President Mugabe sleeping. and he said our new African Union leader is twice the average age of the average African. It's more than twice. If you think of the average age is 21, we're talking about 4.5 times. This is really an extreme, this is the most extreme leadership age gap I can think of. You know, I go back and I've got admiration for Robert Mugabe. I think he was a very powerful freedom fighter. I think extremely articulate man. But, you know, if you look at someone like Zimbabwe, which was the breadbasket of that part of Africa, you look at the people, you look at how much the economy has suffered, he was right. The British did promise him money and then they reneged on it. But at the end of the day, you can't hold a whole country hostage. I believe in Sun Tzu. You know your enemy's there, but if you keep fighting them head on, you're taking more damage. So work out a way to deal with the situation instead of just churning out this sort of liberation theology in the year 2015, which hardly anybody has had the same experience as you because they were born in a free country and all they want to do is eat and get a job and get a better life and look after their kids like everybody in the world wants to do. We don't, you know, whether you're in Timbuktu, Nairobi or London, you know, our ambitions are pretty much the same. We want to elevate ourselves. We want to have a safe, secure family. We want to have opportunities for our children, right? It's not rocket science. And to deny that to people because of an argument at this level, I think is not right. In passing, I'll also mention that President Mugabe's central bank was the first central bank in the recent economic period to try quantitative easing. It didn't work for them. Why did it work elsewhere? Because they started printing money like crazy. And of course, it created a huge inflationary spike, something that people expected to happen in all these other countries, in the US, etc., but it didn't. And from an economic point of view, it's quite interesting why it didn't. But I think that's too long a thing to look at now. But I think, you know, I would have liked a fresher face at the AU. I would have liked someone who's, you know, more of in our generation, someone who could speak our language, who could excite us. But, you know, we're a country, we're a continent that has challenges. It's never going to be linear. Things change will happen over time. And I like to think that, you know, this is probably the last hurrah of that generation that fought so hard to get us our independence. But, you know, I think I would prefer somebody else right now at the helm who's more plugged in. You know, someone like Kagame. Who you know has other challenges, but in terms of delivering, that model is working, right? I mean, as far as I'm concerned, economic growth is happening. People are getting lifted out of poverty. If you look at the hardcore data, there is no other country but Rwanda that has made such a fantastic improvement, and it's been very, very well thought out and implemented. And I think for me that would have been a better choice. Regarding local content, regarding our participation in our economy, which was the question you were asking, you know, my philosophy is this, and I suppose because, you know, I think we have to be global citizens. I think in order to succeed in this world, we need to be globally fluent. Why are places like Dubai, they're fluent. Anyone can turn up, you can set it, you can set up a business, you can get moving. That's global fluency. And I think that is a very, very, you know, we're living in an interconnected world. We cannot be, you know, too nationalistic, otherwise we're going to get bogged down. And therefore I think we've got to look at the world. We can't ignore it. I think what the government is trying to do to address your issue in particular is via what is called local content legislation. Local content legislation means that where a big company like the Chinese contractor has to give out a percentage of their contracts to local operators. How that will be implemented, I think the idea is good. There are some challenges because one of the oil and gas people were telling me, you know, we need an expert in this Do you know how many people have expertise in this in Kenya? 0. So how am I going to do it? So, so there are challenges that you've got to work with, and at times I think in that environment you need policy-making flexibility. Policymakers need to see, okay, this isn't working, I can tweak it to make it work better. It is when our policymakers become very stuck and rigid. So for example, just going off on this, take Senator beer. Senator beer was a very cheap beer. There was a tax remission on it. It was being sold for about 50 bob. Good market, growth business, growing. You drive on that from the airport, you go around to Kiambu, there'll be hundreds of people, businesses, whatever. Government says, no, we're going to take the tax off, put the tax back on, and we're going to collect 7.2 billion shillings, right? They took the tax off, 91% of sales were lost, they didn't collect a shilling, they even stopped collecting because people went out of business. Now, in that environment that you're dealing with, in a country like ours, you've got to be quicker and sharper, right? So what do? You look at the situation, it's not working, I'm changing tack, right? And do it real quick. Because to me, that is better policy making than saying, I'll think about it in 6 months' time. By that time, 30,000 people have lost jobs. They've gone and got something else going, or they're trying to. So I think when you look at a frontier economy like ourselves, it requires better policy making than in developed nations. Because there, the differences are marginal. Here, the impact of making a mistake is so huge. If you thought you're going to get 7 billion shillings and you're getting nothing, you've got a problem, right? Deal with it. But you can't be rigid, I think. So I think local content is what's designed to do that. It's not an optimal situation right now, but I think there's going to be quite a lot of improvement in that regard, I hope. S&P, the credit rating, because of the Eurobond, essentially brings us into the universe. It's like we were outside, it's over the line, we issue the bond, international markets are now pricing Kenya, therefore they can come in and they can price the corporate sector much more easily. It's a step-by-step process. So what I think we're going to see as a consequence of that is a lot more issuance by our corporate companies. And I think Joshua at Mindspeak told us he was looking at doing a Eurobond. Everybody's looking at it. It will happen soon, and we will see a positive knock-on effect. The impact of quantitative easing in frontier markets, I think there has definitely been an impact. And what happened was, going back to that little documentary I showed you, where that guy was saying all this quantitative easing money didn't go into people's pockets. It went into the financial markets. Some of that money from the financial markets ended up here, right? Because they were getting practically free money. And it had quite a big, strong correlation between quantitative easing and our frontier markets. If you look at the frontier indices, they really outperformed in this snapshot period that I'm talking about. And I think a lot of that was driven by this liquidity that came looking for higher yielding assets. And more so, the European quantitative easing, I think, is going to help South Africa, because South Africa has very close ties, trading ties with Europe, as we do as well. But I think the European money will find it easier to come to South Africa than necessarily Kenya. And you're already seeing that in the stock market as well.
I think you mentioned that you are bullish with regard to the stock market for the current year.
Yeah.
Could you please elaborate and give
why?
us a sense of what are the factors which make you bullish? Thank you.
You talk about the shale. Sorry, my name is Ravi.
Hi, Ravi. Oh, you're Ravi.
Yeah.
Good to meet you.
In America, the shale gas phenomenon, how long can it last?
Okay.
And we have Kenya Airways here, which is obviously having its own issues.
Yeah.
But they're still looking at new markets. I think yesterday they announced they're going to fly to Vietnam. What is to Vietnam? I think there was some news. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
What is your opinion on Kenya?
On KQ. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Khan.
Pleasure.
I'm Joel Obengo. Now, I wanted to hear your opinion on the effectiveness of AU interventions in in African crises. And in particular, I want you to focus on the case of northern Mali.
Northern Mali.
Northern Mali.
Okay, good question.
Where we had an uprising in 2012.
Yeah.
And even though African Union has institutions like Peace Security Council, we have Africa Peace Security Architecture, we have so many mechanisms, tools, and institutions. Africans were largely absent in Mali, and the military success in northern Mali was attributed to French participation. How do you see, in an effort to have African solution to African problems, is it feasible without foreign intervention? Thank you.
No, interesting question. Okay, so let me just...
and I also wanted to share with you, I've authored a paper which was published 3 days ago by University of Tokyo on the same, and one is coming in May from US China Public Management Journal on the same. I'll welcome your relation.
Yeah, please share it when it comes out. I think going your question first about the stock market, why am I bullish? And the stock market is coming off a 3-year bull run. Stock prices in Nairobi have been up 144%, excluding dividends, in 3 years. Even if you take in, let's say, a 10% devaluation, the shilling over that period, that's discounted by any dividends you would have had. So we're in the top 10 over the last 3 years. And that's a tremendous outcome. So the reasons driving my bullishness are the following. I think there's a lot of money still coming into frontier markets. Bear in mind that, I would say a lot of the stock market rally has happened, not because of us in this room, it's happened because of international investors. They have been on the buy side for 3 continuous years. And that's why you've seen this outperformance of the big stocks like Safaricom, EABL, because these are stocks that they're able to buy. They have criteria, normally capitalization, turnover, and so forth. I think that trend will continue. Plus, I think we're going to be supported by what I call displacement. Money that was being directed to Lagos is not going to Lagos. It's coming to other places. It's coming here and it's coming south. So for example, this year in January, Lagos was the worst performing stock market in the world. It was down nearly 15%. Compare that to here, we're up 2%, South Africa's up 2.5%. So I think the big thing is, the big driver has been international money that has come in. I think that international money will continue to come in. But whereas some of it was going to Nigeria, it's not going there, and therefore some of it has come here as well. We had a good January in part because of uncertainty around capital gains tax, meant locals were not selling. They were sort of sitting and saying, I'll think about it, let me see what happens. So there wasn't very much supply. That pushed up the market as people came in to buy it. I think the economic stimulus coming from oil is going to be extremely supportive. My calculation is, and this is probably the highball calculation, but if the price comes to where it should, and the workings of the Energy Regulatory Commission are at times mysterious because we don't get the prices that we should expect, and they keep mentioning the shilling, and I want to send him a chart of the shilling and say, well, look at it, and now tell me. But once that comes in, that means per litre of fuel, you're spending 40 shillings less than you were a year ago, per litre. Now, how many litres are you putting in your car? So even at the bottom, the guy who's using it for kerosene, the guy everyone has to use fuel in some shape or form. It is, in my view, the fairest, most grassroots stimulus you could probably have. Compare it to quantitative easing, for example, which is totally, we don't know where these flows are going. Here we know that people are going to have it in their back pocket. If you go back to the last time the economy did really well, 2006, 2007, fastest rate of growth was just before the election in 2007, when we were growing at 7.1% on an annualized basis. That quarter, we actually grew at around 10%, if you just took it as a quarter. What happened at that time, I'll tell you, oil prices were low, food prices were low. This economy is driven not by the millionaires, it's driven by the guy in the street. That guy in the street's got 20 bob more to spend on his airtime, he's got 50 bob more to spend on a beer. That's what I'm waiting for. That's going to be a very, very big boost. And it's going to feed into a lot of these corporates. So it is those 3 or 4 things which are sort of making me bullish. And then, of course, I look at price action. I think, a market can tell you whether it's strong or whether it's weak and how it behaves. And our market is behaving in a strong manner. So I'm looking for a 4th year of gains, obviously. I'm looking for a big gain here. The best performing stock market in Africa, would you believe it, is actually Egypt. Since CC came in, that stock market has just roared. If the stock market was making a decision on CC, we know what it would be. So Egypt best, just to contextualize it for you. Tanzania did very well last year. People keep underestimating Tanzania, but Tanzania was the first to lift limits on foreign ownership percentages last year. They've opened up the capital markets. Nigeria, obviously, under a lot of pressure, continued to be under pressure. And South Africa, which is the 4th entry point, did quite well last year, and I think will do okay this year. They got different challenges, however, but as a destination for international investors, South Africa is very easy. People feel comfortable about it because they're very deep in liquid markets. KQ, interesting question, Ravi. So there's been a massive airline stock rally. Why? Fuel is 1/3 of the expense item for an airline, if not more. Right? We know that. If the oil prices come down, you're paying half, you got a massive, massive profit coming. Now, the issue with Kenya Airways was the following. How much had they hedged their fuel? Right? They had hedged it when the market was up there at $100. So no one is absolutely certain. Are you paying $48 today, or are you paying $100 still? That was the uncertainty. And we haven't had clarity on the hedge book. Until we see that exactly, but overall, I think that Kenya Airways is further to go, returning from a bombed out position. It was way down. I think, it's up about 27% this month, second only to Mumias, which is up 47%. I think someone else was asking me about the market. The market is a trading market. You can't just buy something and sit and wait. I think you've got to trade in and out. Opportunities are presenting themselves. It's a little bit different to 2012, 2013. I think KQ has still got further to go. Going to your shale question, and we are like the shale producers. We're the target as well. And we've been knocked out. Bear that in mind, right? Everyone's saying shale, when are they being knocked out? Our oil has been knocked out. We are the collateral damage. Our oil exploration has gone. What were the Saudis trying to do? They were trying to knock everybody out, right? And they've done it. So, I mean, if people focus on shale, ours are knocked out, be clear. What did the American shale producers do? They hedged. That chart I showed you, let me just show it to you again. Sorry. See, when the price was here, the forward curve was going up to here. You could have sold at this time, you could have sold your oil in 2016, 2017, 2018 for $90. Now, what did the shale producers? They did that. So they're sitting there, the majority of shale producers are locked in. They're going to keep pumping. Pump, baby, pump, because we're selling at $90. We don't care. The price could be at 40. We don't give a hoot. What did our people do? Nigeria, South Sudan, Angola, they never did anything. Today, they are selling at whatever the market is prepared to pay them, if it is prepared to pay them. So in terms, right? If you look at financial management, it's outrageously bad. You could have locked it in. What were you waiting there for? 110? 120? Man, you had a whole country to manage. You had it at 90. Worst case, South Sudan. Think about it. They agreed a fixed deal with Khartoum, $11 per barrel, when the price was $100. What is it now? 45. They're still paying 11. Right? That's just Khartoum. Is there any money in South Sudan? No. Is there a currency shortage? Yeah. What's going to happen? There's nothing left in that pot, right? It's frightening. Nigeria, huge economy, sophisticated people, banks all over the world. Why are they coming and crying now? You had 4 years, 2008, 2009, 2010, 2011, 2012, 2013. Donilon was telling you in 2011, I'm going to hammer the oil price, right? So my point is, the point I'm coming back with is, this is value addition, right? If we're always saying our coffee is not being valued, what do we do with our oil? We didn't add value, we didn't hedge. So all these other guys are sitting there. Some of them, okay, 6 months, some of them 9 months, some of them 12 months, but they're locked in. They don't care. And I'm sure Saudi Arabia and a few of these other guys did some of this as well, because it would be a natural thing to do. So looking at Kenya is one side, but then you come and look at this other side, you can see what's happened here as well. And I think it speaks to a lack of sophistication among some of our economic leaders. Like no one, I mean, I've been looking to see if even a country hedged 10% or 20%. This is my health budget, this is my education budget. Why don't I lock that up? And I've got that covered, right? Today, you got Angola running around looking for money. Everyone is looking for money. I mean, they're paying crazy rates. And then, sorry, the last question was, and I can't read my own writing now. Sorry, can anyone remind me what was? Yes, will you? Oh. Mali. Yes. What is the correlation between what's going on in North Africa, the increased insurgency, and events in 2011? I think this whole mess, and I disagree with Muammar Gaddafi on many things. I mean, but at the same time, I think the overthrow of Gaddafi directly relates to this surge that we're seeing in that part of Africa. I mean, the guy had a lid on it. You might have disagreed with how the lid was working, but he had a lid on it. When the lid got taken off, it got much, much worse. And it spilled over. And I think that's what's happened. Other forces at work as well. But at the same time, I think Gaddafi, interestingly, was a force of stability in that part of the world, which no one recognized. And then if you look at that intervention in Libya, and you look at it for what it was, it really was not an uprising. It was a manufactured uprising in Benghazi, right? Where you put in a lot of people, you start shooting around, and then you have this. It's a model that's working, by the way. It's been working in the last few years. Putin calls it color revolutions, whatever you want to call it, but it is highly effective and it works. So I see the uncertainty in North Africa in part a consequence of the fall of Colonel Gaddafi. I think that was a lid that was on there which has been taken off. With respect to our ability to deal with that, let's take, for example, how we're currently dealing here with Al-Shabaab. How many Al-Shabaab guys are there running around this country? 400, 500, 100? Dedicated to do damage. It's a criminal enterprise. Go and find them as criminals. But don't sweep through 2 million people, alienate everybody. That's not the right approach, I don't think. I think that you need the support of those communities. You need me to come and say, actually, I'm not comfortable with this guy. I don't know what he's doing. But if I feel that you're picking on everybody, I'm not going to come and have that conversation with you. And I think that's the fundamental misfire for me in terms of our approach, and I think in general. So I'm worried about that. I think I call it the insurgency tail risk. Nassim Taleb, the tail risk is the risk of very, very, very bad outcomes. It's normally tiny, but it can expand. And I call it Africa's insurgency tail risk, and I think it continues to gain strength. Will we need the help of other parties? I think we do, really. If you go back to the comments I said about underspending in national security, the level of sophistication amongst our partners like France, UK, US, you know, I think in a world of collaboration, we need as much help as we can. And how that plays out, we'll have to wait and see.
My name is Martina from True North Leadership. And thank you, because I think we could actually all come here every Saturday and just listen to you. Yes, you've got so much to give.
Thank you.
I'm thinking in regard to also to local content, but on an African level. Now we now have the crisis, or we've had the crisis. It's still going on with Ebola in West Africa, and not just West Africa. Actually, it's affected all of us, even here economically. There's going to be a lot happening once it's over, and that's rebuilding the economies. What I see is that China has been going in there forcefully, the US has been going in there forcefully. I'm sure that they have a secondary gain that they want to obtain, which is not just saving people's lives, but also getting the business that's in there afterwards. I don't think you do that for free. There's no free lunch. So where do you see African countries going in? I mean, we produce food, we produce all these things that could actually be needed there, but are we going to get a part of that rebuilding? I mean, we see all the extra produce from Europe and the US coming here. When are we going to take charge and actually using our own resources?
Yeah, no, I think that's a good question. I think, just to mention one point, Sierra Leone, Liberia, and what was the other one? Guinea, are about the size of 1/3 of Afghanistan in terms of economy, just to give you a picture of it. So these were economies emerging out of conflict, which were actually some of the fastest growing economies in Africa because of the low base effect. You know, you were able to grow very, very quickly. You know, is it you know, everyone, I think there's this naivety that sometimes we have, particularly with the Chinese, that somehow the Chinese are coming there to write us checks for fun, you know. No one is coming here to write us checks for fun. Let's be serious. Everybody has got their national interest at heart. I think we don't have as much of a national interest concept as others who are coming here. This is our problem. We are 54 countries. We're all speaking with different voices. You want to go speak to China? One destination. The whole of the people, Xi Jinping. You want to go and speak to the USA? President Obama. You want to come to speak to Africa? Where do you start? Who do you start with? Right? This is a challenge. When you're dealing with our people, are we conscious of the national interest? You know, our arguments at times, you know, what our problems occur are when we're not thinking about the national interest, when people are thinking about themselves. You know, it creates a huge problem. So I think that to me is a challenge that we're facing, and I think we've got to work out how do we coordinate ourselves better and say exactly what we want in a better manner, because other people who are coming here are very clear about what they want, right? I mean, we know what they want, and they're not coming here to, you know, there is, to me, everyone talks about aid and trade, and aid is an economic tool, right? There is also a final situation where you see people dying, you want to help. That's right, that happens, that's the world. Bob Geldof can go and sing a song and we can all help, and it's good. But at the same time, people are now tying their aid to trade. They will aid a place if they can think, we'll do this, we'll get something out of it, we'll make a better return. So I think what we've got to do is just work out what people are trying to achieve. Let's not be naive and assume that, you know, that the Chinese premier turned up here because of business, but whereas he's got about 90 people locked up, he's trying to get them out. I'm sure that was what it was about. But, you know, let's not be naive. Let's look at it for what it is, and let's look at China, the US, and deal with everybody, because for us to throw our bet with one group is the road to disaster. We need to be able to deal in a multipolar world with everybody and work out who can offer us the best option at that time. China offered us the best option, the railway, fantastic, let's do it. I drove up and down that road. By the way, that railway is what's underpinning the economy in 2015. A ton of activity going on down that road. Every 30 kilometers, there was something happening. I was quite surprised. And I think that is what's giving the economy a boost this year. Think of the Thika superhighway, and you're going to get a replication effect with the railway. Might not be exactly the same, but it's going to be a similar multiplier type thing. I think we should also have some kind of dual carriageway from Mombasa. I mean, it's crazy when you think about it. That is the artery. I drive down there, you see Rwanda, you see all these trucks going all across. Why have we only got such a small road? I think if I was looking to do something simple, I'd just do that. But I see the railway as being a very, very supportive part. And just finishing off with your point, I think, our challenges, all of us as Africans, is how do we get our voice heard? How do we coordinate better? And how do we always have this idea of what is best for everybody and not what is just best for me at this time? Because, if you look at it, people can get bought off for very little. When the economic benefit's $100 million and you take $1 million, you're leaving $100 million on the table for somebody else. And that's not going to where it should be going. And those sorts of mistakes accumulate and become very, very expensive over time, I think.
Hello, my name is Javan Pamba. I was listening to Jim Rogers. He started with George Soros, the Quantum Fund.
Yes.
When before everybody else knew what a hedge fund was. He was saying that he's optimistic about sub-Saharan Africa, particularly because agriculture can be done here. Very fertile, don't even need to work that hard. But the problem is when you come to Kenya, and most of African countries, we've neglected agriculture. We are looking at big infrastructure projects. Like right now, they're saying oil is gone. Let's forget about it. But our government is still building an oil pipeline. See there the conflict of interest. And we are using debt to build that thing. So you see, it's like we have neglected one agriculture, which by the still earns Kenya a lot of money, at the expense of oil, which is gone. And also the other question is, how do most African countries balance between the relationship between the West and the East? When uncertainties come, like right now, Nigeria was happy, last year GDP rebased, we were bigger than South Africa.
It's like Shakespeare, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's like Shakespeare, you're king of the world and boom.
Everybody is happy. The other day you will turn up the TV, CCTV, you see the finance minister saying it's time to diversify the economy. It can be done through taxes. You don't diversify an economy through taxes. You diversify through investment.
Yeah.
You wake up one morning, today, like the way Putin and Obama are fighting, like every other time, when America has been the dominant power for the last 60 years, after Britain collapsed, after people said, we are done with the British pound, let's go to America after fighting Germans 2 world wars. Britain was done after 100 years of success. Today, Jim Rogers says, America is like the largest debtor in history. And he doesn't see how the world is moving east. That's where the money is. And right now, most African countries are not looking at where the money really is, on how to deal with the people with the money. Like the Asians, where like a country like Singapore doesn't have agriculture. Kenya has a lot of agriculture, but we still haven't looked that way. We are still trying to balance, waiting to see. And while the world tomorrow, as a result of Putin fighting with America, tomorrow everybody may say, we are done with the US dollar. Let's go to yuan. And it causes chaos here, everybody trying to rush to the yuan again. How do you think that our politicians are ready to prepare to such factors?
That's an interesting question. I think our politicians have got to be globally fluent. They've got to be able to balance East and West. Just to take you back to your point you were making about East having the money. In our Eurobond, $2.75 billion worth of Eurobond, do you know who bought most of that? America. They bought 2/3. 66% was bought by North Americans. 1% was bought by China. But that will change because China has not really come into the capital markets in Africa. It's a relatively new phenomenon. They're going to come, but I'm just pointing that out. I think Africa, we have two choices. Either we turn away from the world or we turn our face to the world. And out of all the Africans I've met, including myself, I think we all want to be a part of the world. That's, you know, that's a part of our story as well. But I think we've got to be clever at how if somebody's better at something, fine, get them in. If the Chinese want to build our roads, build our roads. What do we need as a country to progress? What are our key priorities? And then get the best people for that job. That's my theory, and I think that can work. I would push it in that direction. You were sort of asking about sort of big moves at the global scale and how they come and impact us. I mean, you know, this is what I was saying. I think we are more interconnected than ever before, and we see those interconnection points very, very easily. I was using the Russian ruble, but Nigeria could have been an example that I could have used of that. That is an oil war launched somewhere else, which is deeply, deeply affecting other parts on the continent. So I believe the interconnection is the highest it's ever been. We're all on a mobile phone. I mean, I was thinking to myself, 20 years ago, if I was in Mombasa, how many people would I communicate with in a day? And how many am I communicating with now? And it's just exponential, you know. I could be tweeting with somebody, Sadia or Peter. It could be somebody, or Ravi. It could be somebody in New York. You know, it's just incredible how interconnected we are. And I think that really is transformative. But ultimately, I think, look, we need to be smart. We need to negotiate better. Our policymakers need to be better. That's the way I see it.
My name is Titus.
Yes.
Thanks again for this very enlightening presentation.
Thank you.
My question was around what has been happening at Mumias Sugar.
Yes.
Of course, a lot has been happening, and top on the list is what appears to be an imminent collapse of the company. Now, what's your take on the happenings, and what does it mean for the future of the Kenya sugar industry?
Yeah.
Is there a chance that the industry will survive from the onslaught of the private producers, the likes of Kisco, the lifting of the COMESA bans?
Yeah.
Yesterday there was some news about the government pumping in some money there. I mean, is there a point of government really putting in more money there, wasting public resources of the industry? I mean, the company should just be left to die a natural death, and probably let the people in Western Kenya find another economic activity to do.
I think Mumias Sugar is the biggest strain on ambitions for our governor, really, because if you go back and you look at Mumias Sugar, and the time I looked at it, and I don't know, I can't remember which year it was. It must have been like, there was a year in the last 5 years when sugar prices went through the roof. I can't remember which year it was. It was, the price per pound went from, it trades around $15. I can't remember what the exact thing is. It went as high as 38. In that period, Mumia should have made a massive profit. And so I was sitting there writing, my God, this is going to be a huge profit, one-off profit, you're making like double. And when the profit came through, it wasn't there. And when I looked into it, the problem at Mumias is very simple. The problem at Mumias is selling sugar at 30% below its recommended retail price. That's been going on for 5-6 years. To stop that, someone has got to stop that. That's how easy it is to fix Mumias, or not easy. Who are these people who are making these windfall profits? So really, from a business point of view, I know what the problem is. The problem is that the company is selling sugar, and the profits it should be making are being made by people who are sitting in the middle. And that's been happening every single year. And the 30% discount is the difference between Mumias being a profitable company and Mumias not being a profitable company. There are a lot of challenges around, no doubt, if you take something like COMESA, but I think there is a viable sugar industry to be had there if it was managed properly. I really do. Now, we've had this huge recovery in Mumias' share price this month. It's the best performing stock in Nairobi, up 47%. If you put $100, you'd have 147, and not bad. But the trigger for that rally was Cabinet Secretary Henry Rotich. And one sentence he said, we're looking at ways to support Mumias, and there was another sentence. And that was what triggered the rally, because everybody said to themselves, okay, the government's going to step in, and underwrite this business. And I think, from a point of view of, if you're from Western, this is an economic pillar. You can't let it go. It's like Mombasa Port. I mean, these are things where there is a duty of care. So I think the government will step in, and I think that share price probably goes a lot higher. But in order to resolve Mumias Sugar, it's a very simple thing. Make sure they sell their sugar at the price they should be selling it. Yes, hi.
How are you?
Fine.
My name is Moses.
Karibu.
And I have one question. We know that food prices provide a very strong tailwind to our economic growth. Now, the government is doing a lot is promising to do a lot in Kelana Kulalu. My question is, do you believe in it? And the second question is, vis-a-vis that project, what do you think is the future of the smallholder farmer out there in the countryside?
The first question was about Tana River Delta.
Yes, the Kelana Kulalu project. I mean, it's going to be one of the biggest projects in the world. I mean, do you really believe it?
Yeah.
My name is Harry, here, standing.
Hi.
I've got probably a question and a comment. One is, how did the McKinsey come up with the IGDP measurement? Is it because I know, yes, we're good users of technology, but I don't think we're good producers of technology. Then the other one is, I see a very common pattern in all African countries in terms of response to different issues, be it education, energy, anything you think of. Whenever we have a crisis, it's almost the same pattern. First is shock, then denial, then try and sort of manage the situation, then look for a solution. So the solution is normally looked at probably 4 or 5 steps later. How do we get our policymakers to be able to react, not react, but respond effectively, as opposed to react to this kind of things? Thank you.
You're excited about growth in Kenya. You're pushing most of it over the past decade to IGDP. And I'm thinking, if you're not Bob Collymore, you're not smiling at it, are you? Again, we've got car dealerships springing up on every other road, and we've cleared up coffee bushes and put concrete in space. What's to cushion the shilling?
What's that?
What's to cushion the shilling?
Yeah, those car dealerships are a mystery to me, actually. I've been wondering, with such valuable real estate, so I'm still working my head around what exactly is happening in there. But it's pretty extraordinary when you think of the value of the land that's being utilized for the car dealerships. There must be a lot of car traffic. But I think there are some other reasons there, which I won't go into right now. I think in part it's a very quick way to convert money into a car and then convert it back. Sorry? Yes. I didn't say launder. No. You did. I know. I'm coming to you next, Andrew, to take your question. So let me go back. Tana River, obviously a very large-scale project. I think those sort of large-scale projects have a lot of challenges in Kenya because I think you've got to align so many different interest groups and achieve that alignment, and it's proving quite difficult, I think. So it makes sense. I'm just not sure that there's a political will to push it over the line right now, as far as I can see, but I stand to be corrected. McKinsey IGDP, you're talking about the manufacturer. I think McKinsey IGDP was looking at it more from the consumer side, right? Which is an interesting point you're making. And a lot of people sort of tell me, we are not seeing what we all expected. We expected a Silicon Savannah, we expected this, we expected that, it hasn't come yet. It takes a little bit of time, I think we have the ingredients for that. I had a guest here, Dennis, you remember. I mean, Dennis has built a massive business in the area I'm talking about, and there are many Dennises around. Sometimes they don't appear here, but they are. And they're going to catch everyone's attention the day someone like Dennis sells a stake in his companies for a large amount of money. That day is not far away. And the moment that happens, I think everyone will suddenly understand the opportunity that there is in that sector. The challenge I found in the IT sector is, for many years, people were very good at applying for grants from Bill and Melinda Gates, right? You write a good plan, you get $50,000. But that's not the game now. The game is build a business, get $50 million for it, right? Don't go scraping around for a grant. Get the grant to start your business off. So I think what we're watching is an evolution happening from a sort of more grant-based way of thinking into a full-on entrepreneurial way of thinking. And I think that this switchover is now happening, and we will see a lot of activity, value creation in that IGDP economy. Your point is right. You know, we don't manufacture any of these things. Look at somewhere like South Korea or Apple. Everyone's attention was caught by Apple, how much money they're making. You look at, you know, if you hit it right in this global economy and you create real value, you know, you have more money than countries. I don't know what the cash balance at Samsung and at Apple is, but it's phenomenal. You know, I mean, they could sort of underwrite our infrastructure plan for the whole of Africa if they felt like it, but maybe we should go and tell them that they'll get some good returns from it. Regarding our responses, I agree with you that, and that's my one concern. I would say, if I was sitting there and talking to the president, I would say, you know, we've got to be smarter, quicker, and we've got to react better than everyone else against our peers, because we're also competing amongst our peers, Tanzania, Uganda. We need to be better, but also because we're competing on a global stage now. So absolutely, understand it, tell us what you're going to do, but move at speed, because at times we're moving way too slowly. For example, let's go back to the stock market. Capital gains tax at 5%, I haven't got an issue with that. I don't think anybody really has, okay? The optics of it are good, no one's really got an issue. But how do you tell a stockbroker to collect the capital gains tax, right? That stockbroker does not know what my portfolio looks like, what my gain or loss might be. They don't have visibility on what I'm doing. Why should they? I don't want to be with just one person. It means I'm stuck. If I'm not happy, what do I do? What about my losses? How are they computing my losses? So in any place in the world, a capital gains tax regime is implemented in a way that at the end of the year, I do my tax returns. I bought this, I sold this, net, this is what I owe you, and here's your check. But some guy who's sitting at the stockbroker to collect the tax, it's not going to work, right? They don't have 360-degree visibility on what you're doing. And therefore, again, here, you know, go to court, I'm taking this person, that. The thing is designed to fail. We can see it as a practitioner. It cannot be enforced in its current format. There is nowhere that I know in the world where a stockbroker is taking my capital gains tax, right? Nowhere. Now, find me one and I'll change my mind, but nowhere. So therefore, again, this comes back to my point. Not working, change it. No one's fighting you on the tax. They're fighting you on the implementation. Understand what you're being fought on and change direction. What worried me in January is if we have big loggerheads, we have arguments, it contaminates our market. People start thinking, they forget the 5%, they say, there's some capital gains tax argument going on here, I'll leave it to see when it all settles down, which is what happens. So, taking your point. So, first of all, the cushion has been, a lot of money came in from the Eurobonds, so quite a bit of that has been used to do some intervention in support of the shilling. I think the markets are going to find a fair value for the shilling. I don't think our central bank should be fighting it. It's just not worth it, because at the end of the day, the markets are bigger than we are. And if they want to fight us, they're going to fight us. So, but the central bank has been quite good at intervention. Whoever's running that program is quite smart, because they come in at the right time, they push the market when the market, and they stop the panic. You can see that happening. It's relative. I give full credit to this central bank's intervention group. They're very smart. I think the shilling is going to be cushioned by a sharply lower price of oil. You think about it. Before we were paying $100 for the same amount of fuel. Now we're paying less than 50. Every month we got to find half the amount of money we were having to find last year, right? That money is going to move around our economy as opposed to going to Dubai or to Abu Dhabi or somewhere else. So that is also going to be supportive. And I think, you know, remittances are the biggest component of support. Whenever I go around the world, and I went a few years ago with KCB, and we met the diaspora, you know, our people in an intellectual or information century, these people who go abroad and create careers and send money back, they're a very valuable asset. And I think in this case, they're also supporting the economy. If you look at real estate, they're the guys buying houses. If you know, a lot of that money is coming in, not captured completely in the data. I reckon it's a much higher number, and that's what's going to support it. In fact, I actually think we'll have a rate cut later on this year because the inflation rate is going to go right down. I think we could have a zero inflation rate at some point later on in the year, which I think will surprise absolutely everybody, I'm sure. I think that was it, and I've got people who are just... Peter?
Yeah, my name's Andrew Franklin, and I always find these sessions to be rather fascinating. I disagree with a lot of what Ali Khan says. These comments are about the intellectual dishonesty and the lack of history, of our knowledge of history. When we talk about value addition, we don't ask why Mumias Sugar doesn't produce rum. And yet Barbados, 1650, which became the most prosperous colony in the British Empire on sugar, 1650, and they still produce rum. But we don't. Governor Cadero doesn't answer that question. I know. The capital gains tax. One of the interesting things that came out, is because I do talk a lot about security and governance issues and terrorism or insurgency, is the brokers finally said, we don't have personal identification numbers. These are people who deal in money, and they don't have pins. Does the government still issue pins? Which leads to the IGDP, mobile money, hot money coming in to finance poaching. From where? Thailand? China? Hong Kong? Do you know? I don't know. Do people have pins? You know, we talk about value addition. We used to grow a lot of coffee here. KQ wants to fly to Vietnam. 15, 20 years ago, the Vietnamese looked at a few coffee plantations. Now they're the world's #2, #3 producer. Our coffee producers will tell you that their coffee's not so great. Okay, but we're not up there any longer. KQ has literally a monopoly, a regional monopoly. You look at the world, the globalized world, we're all hooked in tweets. An airplane is shot down somewhere over eastern Ukraine. It's not even the fault of Malaysian Air. Then what happens? They've also lost another airplane. That airline may go broke. We have had 2 fatal air crash disasters with KQ since 2000. Off Abidjan, Douala. You'll never see that on National Geographic. You'll never see seconds from disaster. We've never heard about any of those accidents, the reports, what caused them, what happened. And we don't ask. We celebrate the former CEO as one of those corporate titans. I seriously think that there's a lack of, we talk about corporate governance. There is a serious problem with intellectual dishonesty in this country. And I've been here for 34 years. There's a serious problem with the way ethics in business. Not that we don't bribe, not that our procurement people don't add money when they're buying pencils for our companies, but we just don't ask. We do not ask. The one place where the government in this country could add value is in security. And we don't demand that they add value in security. And Ali Khan Satchu is absolutely correct when he talks about where we spend money and don't demand that we spend it on a national police service in accordance with the law. We give $100 billion a year. We do not spend the money on our Kenya Defense Forces. We don't support our troops properly. We don't implement the law. And we allow our leaders to tell us stuff that's not true. And we say nothing. The KDF in Amisom are supporting the government in Mogadishu, not our national interest. We seem to have a national leadership with no national interest. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Adadana. I wanted to know your opinion on Bitcoin and if it will play any role in Africa in 2015.
Hi everyone, my name is Peter. My question to you, Ali Khan, is recently I saw in the newspaper Mikhail Gorbachev said that there is a chance that this Cold War might turn hot, with Barack Obama putting a lot of pressure on Russia. So I just wanted your take on that. In addition, you're pretty bullish on 2015. So what are the risks to your forecast? I mean, what could go wrong that make 2015 not so bullish? Thank you.
I think there's a lot of potential for Bitcoin, right? Because fiat currencies, people have got less and less faith in. That's created the opportunity for Bitcoin. What I wasn't clear, and maybe you can explain this to me. Bitcoin fluctuates every day in value, and there are huge fluctuations. I think the fluctuation, it's been about 20% this week, right? I think it had a good week, went up. Now, who bears that fluctuation risk? Yeah. You see, I don't know, and I've been trying to work that out. And until I work that out, I don't know I don't know what's happening, because if Bitcoin is a currency and it's moving up and down, it's moving up and down more than any other currency I know, except maybe the Euro Swiss, the day that they lifted the cap and that kind of thing. So I'm just, that's my one area of concern. But I think clearly, if you look at the growth of it, I think there's plenty of growth, and I think here it's going to grow very, very fast. It's already growing big time, and I think it's going to get plugged into, it seems to be plugged into our mobile money architecture already in some shape or form. So I think it's got a strong future. I think you're dealing with people who've adopted digital money before M-Pesa, so it's going to be a relatively easy sell. You're selling to the converted in a way. Peter asked me about what were the risks. First of all, Ukraine, Gorbachev. I agree with Gorbachev. I think anything can happen at any moment, and that's why I called it an arrhythmic world. I think there's so many risks out there. We don't know what I go back to Donald Rumsfeld. Known knowns, known unknowns, and unknown unknowns. And I think, we're in a world which has moved down to the right-hand side of his continuum. And I genuinely worry about Ukraine. And, call me strange, but I think, if Vladimir was parked up somewhere in Mexico and sitting on the US border there, the US would have issues with him. And I think, therefore, I don't see Putin as the devil that he is sometimes portrayed at in the Western press. And I think that's also an interesting point that's happening here, is the press was very Western-facing before, and now it's changing. And particularly you see that from Africa, where people have, don't see it necessarily the same way the Wall Street Journal or Fox News are seeing it, thank God. But I do see it as extremely risky. I think, it has been, President Bush liked to drop bombs. These have been 50 times more effective bombs. This is shock and awe on a new level, right? You have crushed an economy. You've taken the currency down. Your people have been borrowing money abroad to finance projects. Suddenly they've got to pay back double. It's horrendous. And it was designed to do this. The test case was actually Iran, in many respects, where the Iranian rial came under real pressure as a first test of currency warfare, being a coercive diplomatic tool to put pressure on somebody. But I don't think Putin is Iran. I think Putin and the Russian psyche are very, very, and actually the Iranian psyche is similar to the Russian psyche, very strong, nationalistic. You put them under pressure, they're going to back their president. They're not going to go and say, they're not going to go the other way, which is what seems to be the thinking. The risks to my bullish scenario are several. Political. I think, we've got this devolution process happening, which is a great political thing, but it's like having one CEO and then setting up 47 CEOs, right? Everyone's now a CEO. Everyone wants the infrastructure of a CEO. Fine, but also let's be commercial about it, right? Show us who can deliver. So there's a little bit of messiness, I think, around. That concerns me. A little bit of uncertainty on the politics side. The insurgency, that seems to have calmed down a little bit, thank God. But still, imagine if the tourism scenario plays out, people continue to lose jobs on the coast. These are going to be easy pickings for anybody who's going to come and tell them a story and pay them a check. That kind of thing worries me. and a lack of policy response to the new reality. You know, I'm not being bearish on oil. Just let's forget about oil. Let's go to geothermal. You know, we've got fantastic resources. Brilliant. We're lucky. We're top 10 in geothermal. Fine. Let's just refocus a little bit. It's no good borrowing $4 billion and spending it on oil. Well, if it's at $50, you're not going to be pumping anything, right? So let's try and adjust. I think that's the key message. Let me leave you with the last comment, because I'm going to invite you to come and speak next time round, Peter. Peter's at UAP, he runs the investment book there. What is your scenario? Are you bullish?
Yes, we are, because of a few factors that you mentioned. For example, falling inflation.
Yeah.
With inflation falling, you know, interest rates are going to come down as well, so that just means companies and individuals can borrow more cheaply.
Yeah.
We have all these big infrastructure projects as well coming online, the standard gauge railway, LAPSET and everything. So those will definitely pump money into the economy. So we're bullish as well on the economy as well.
Great. I think, you know, we're going to see a big, I mean, the big story intra-Africa is what they're calling a west-east switch. A lot of people are expecting a big switch out of capital, which was going west. Look, Nigeria's story is a great story. It's going to come. It's going to be big. It's 170 million people. But right now, trying to get into Nigeria, it's catching a falling knife. Not many people I know like doing that.
Yes, my name is Dominic. I want to, first of all, appreciate the way you've put it across to us.
Thank you.
And my concern is on the Eurobond.
Yes.
You've mentioned a very interesting issue concerning Ghana, that after they raised all the money they raised, they pumped it back to the salaries. Don't you think it's just replicating itself right here? Let me put it across this way. What is your take concerning the devolution part of it, looking at the constitutional offices that we've created by that, looking at how the CEOs, quote unquote, are behaving, and also the MCs, let me call them that way, holding the same CEOs, you know, at lump sum. Case in scenario, we have McQueen, for example, where nothing is going on, no project is taking off. The last couple of years, I mean, for like a whole year, nothing has been going on, and yet we're still incurring interest. What's your take on that?
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Carol.
Hi, Carol.
Just to add to what he's saying and what the other gentleman here said, I think this kind of fora bring out these critical issues. But what can we do, or what can you do, or what can, like, this critical mass do to begin to drive change in the leadership? Because development in Africa is directly related to politics.
Yes.
You know, there's the correlation you cannot
100%,
deny.
yes, yeah.
So what we need to do is develop systems or put in place mechanisms to ensure that the leadership is able to either be inducted once they assume leadership, so that they understand the economic factors or the implications of their actions to the economic development of countries or the country that they're running, because then the resources that we have will be better utilized, or more, better utilized for the people. Because what is happening is, it's actually political, the political impact, the political actions impacting on the development, either because of lack of knowledge or the big man attitude that we really have. So can a critical mass begin to be developed?
My name is Titus Ayusa. My question was going on, basing on all this, there's the aspect of Japan. As Japan, maybe we've lost it out of the picture. And there's another question on private equity. Currently in Africa, I think East Africa is doing well, the private equity. And then the private equity in terms of the pension funds. How easy is it? Are they embracing the idea of private equity in terms of unlocking the money that they have? And also on the central bank, the deposits that they are maybe having in that space. can it maybe be pulled on the private equity, the circles, the charmers? There's a lot of money that is lying idle. Because casing in point that we are seeing in the current bonds that are being raised, they are basically all of them are being oversubscribed. Yeah, that's my take on that.
The question about the Eurobond, about Ghana. Ghana is the warning bell for Africa. Right? What is the warning bell? The warning bell is our governments are too expensive. Right? We're living in the 21st century. I hate to say it, and I think it's a political issue because, you know, I think our government should be getting someone like McKinsey and basically saying to our people, we want to reduce by half. We're going to give you a 3-month, 6-month program to send you into the private sector, and this is the way we've got to do it. And I think that's the only way we're going to be able to do it. Otherwise, we're going to continue bloating up, because that is the political imperative. You come into power, you want your people there, you're going to put people in, and it just continues compounding on itself. Ghana is the lesson that is not possible, and if you've got a Eurobond out there, you're in deep trouble. Because what happens is the Eurobond falls through the floor. Ghana, Eurobond went from 8%, we are at about 6.25%, went from 8 to over 11, right? Now that means people think that Ghana cannot pay them back. That's why they're demanding such a high rate of interest. And that's what I was saying about the pricing, bringing more policy stabilization, because people are going to go, oh, I don't want that to happen to me. Right? I mean, you can imagine if it happens to us, what are our policymakers going to be dealing with? A nightmare. Right? So I think it's good, but also Ghana is a lesson to us. Now, we're in this messy period where because of politics, a sense of people not feeling that, you know, government, Serikali was a helicopter up there, nothing to do with us. We wanted to bring it down. We wanted people to feel and touch that this is my guy. And also, it's going to cause an effect, because if your guy doesn't perform and someone else is performing, people over time are going to say, well, what's happening? Why aren't you? So I think actually it's going to be positive in the medium term, because you'll have comparison points and people will have expectations, right? If you don't deliver now, you know, I think the politics of Africa is changing in the sense that before you had to consolidate your block, right? You had to make sure you delivered as many as your block as possible. If you had the numbers, you'd make it. I think today it's going to change. You're going to have to deliver. You can't sit as an MP for 30 years and nothing has happened. You can't sit as a governor and you haven't created anything. So the test is going to come. I think initially it was a big ego thing, and I got pushed off the car by a governor's car in Nairobi, and I realized it was the governor of Migori. And I was thinking to myself, wow. But sorry, that was just an aside. But I do think, look, you know, very messy, a challenge, but ultimately headed in the right direction, because people are going to see the cause and effect. I'm from Mombasa. What have you done? Have you changed anything? Did you do, you know, and that is going to make the difference. And I think we're seeing that cause and effect change from Kinshasa to Ouagadougou to events in near Wilson Airport, right? Where you had society bringing pressure. Maybe someone does a funny trick and gets away with it this time, but over time it's going to be more and more difficult to get away with, you know, and I think that's going to be a very, very dynamic change. With you, which is more about creating a sort of a way of putting pressure. Well, let's do it. Why not? There are lots of things I want to do, which I'll finish off in a minute. I do a lot of work through the Kenya National Chamber, Kiprono. He's very, very proactive, and I like his style, and you know, so there are different pressure points. But I agree. I think, you know, if the more people, the more you consolidate with one voice, the more people that you're working together with, the more powerful you become in such an environment. And just remind me. Yes. Japan. Yes. Japan. Shinzo Abe came to Africa. You might have forgotten. He came last year. He went mostly to gas destinations, because Japan's big challenge, of course, is power, particularly after Fukushima. And they might be turning some of those things back on again. I worked for the Japanese at Sumitomo Bank. I'll tell you a funny story. I'd just been hired. I was 28 years old. I had a lot of people I'd come in with me. We were about 15 people. When you're a banker, it's all about the bottom line, so you need to be working. We had to put a computer system in. We were working late at night. And I look up at about 11 p.m. because, you know, for us it was just, let's get started, and no one had left the office. And I looked around and I thought, what's happened? And our boss was a man called Konishi-san. So I went to some other san. I said, "San, what's happened?" He said, "Konishi-san's sleeping at his desk." I looked in the desk. Konishi-san was asleep. In Japan, you can't leave till your boss has left. So this had left 100 people in the office at 11 p.m. because Konishi-san was so exhausted. I said, "I'll call Konishi-san." "Ali-san, no call Konishi-san. Terrible, terrible, terrible." They left at 2 in the morning. But, but you know, the Japanese have a lot to offer. You can see that in the quality of the road in Kileleshwa. Right? It's a good road. I might disagree with a few things, but it's the best drainage that I've seen compared to some other stuff. And I, for one, think that the Japanese, when they get into something, they have a very, very strong commitment. And again, going back to my multilateral, multipolar thinking, we've got to deal with everybody. Japanese, Chinese, US, Europe. And by creating that competition, we'll get a better deal for ourselves. It's when we think, you know, when we give things to other people, a special favor, we're going to do this with you. If it makes sense, do it. I don't mind, but at least have competition. The more competition you have in something, the better end result you're going to have. I would like to thank all of you for coming today. I really appreciate it, and seeing old faces, new faces, and friends. It really has been a pleasure. I hope it was interesting. I would like to just finish off by thanking a number of people. I'd like to thank the Intercontinental, who've been very, very strong supporters of ours throughout, from the time when President Museveni came, and we had to find a location very quickly. And finally, I'd like to thank all of you, because I was thinking about it this morning, and I was thinking to myself, you know, this is my tribe, my 21st century tribe. It's my people in this place, and I really appreciate it. It gives me energy during my week. It gives me energy of all this conversation, and I'm very grateful to all of you. And I hope it was interesting today. Thank you.